So to summarize these simple examples, we're gonna have some more examples here. Basically, with the power of this function calling, we can, as I said, inject our own logic inside a conversation. OpenAI function calling for beginners, what it is, how we can use it for your LLM projects. And in this video, we'll dive into this from basic implementations to more advanced, so you can then understand and use it yourself. And myself, it took me some iterations until I understood what's going on. So you might need to rewatch this video or play a little bit with the code until you get it or build something with it. At least this is how I learn faster. So let's take a look at the raw explanation of what is OpenAI function calling. So recently OpenAI moved from functions to tools. At least they changed their terminology and on the API in Python as well. And basically what function calling is, it allows you to connect models like GPT-4o to external tools and systems. And this is useful because you can empower your AI assistants with all sorts of integrations and capabilities. In simple language, what does it mean is that you can help your assistant do stuff with your own logic. For example, you have a database, you have an API, you want them to answer a question based on your information, then this is what OpenAI function calling is helping you to do. And my simplest definition for what it is, and I'm going to reference this along the video, is that you can inject your own logic in the middle of the conversation. So let's take a look at how it's done. So I created here a few examples so we can move ahead with the examples and let's see. So first of all, I'm just initializing the OpenAI client and I'm getting the API key from my .env file. And then before we even dive into what is function calling, let's just do a simple call. And this simple example, all it does is just asking what's the weather in Tokyo right now. So if I run this, and what we can see is the AI is telling us that it can't provide real-time information and it doesn't know. So this is one case that we see that the AI cannot tell us what is going on. Let's take a look at this example as well. So in this case, we have an assistant that is a customer support assistant. In this case, we also tell it that we have some tools, but on this case, we are not providing any tools, any function calling, anything. And the user is asking if you can tell it what's the delivery date of the order. So let's run it. And now the AI is basically telling us that it needs the order number. So all I do is just mimic a conversation. So in this case, the user is saying that the order is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We run it again. And in this case, they are saying like, great, let me check the details. I need to look up the information. Please hold for a moment, checking the order. And essentially, they didn't really do anything because they don't, we are asking for something very specific. They don't know how to answer because they are not trained on this. So it's basically just gave us some general information. But what we'll see is that function calling is allowing us to solve these two issues. So issue one is not able to connect to the internet and there is some questions that is doesn't able to answer. The other thing here is, for example, we want this customer support assistant to just go to our database, pull the information and give it back to the user while they are chatting. So how do we do this? With function calling. So let's take a look. Okay, so we are back in this example and for now I'm gonna add the tools. Now before I'm gonna dive deep into the explanation, let me just run it so we have an overview of what's happening and then I'll explain each step. So let's play this. So remember in the other example, what happened is that we got this response. It says that it's unable to get real-time information. But now we added the new feature, the tools, and now we are getting something different. So now we get not content, but we get a tool call. And now with this tool call, this is the information we are getting. We get the function, we get arguments, which it pulled from the question, from this query, it pulled Tokyo, and also it told us the function name. And now what I'm doing is I'm taking this function. So I have this thing. All I do is I take the arguments, translate this to regular Python. Function name, also I take function name. Now here is the cool thing that is cool with Python, I guess you can also do it with JavaScript, is that if I have a function named getWeather, which I do, for now it's just a dummy logic that is just saying the weather is 20 degrees for every location. But let's imagine it's going to go to API or some database. And now with eval, what I can do is I can turn it to an actually function call. So you see that it's a function. Let's, for example, if I change these two, instead of get weather, get 1, 2, 3, 4, then you see that it didn't find it because it's not here in the document. So yeah, this is one cool thing. And all we do is I unpack this. So when we do arguments like this, it's just the same as I would do something like location equals Tokyo. And this is what this allows us to do. And the get weather one is what I explained with the eval. And now when we print the result, what's happening is that we get it's calling our Python function, which is pretty cool. So what happened here essentially is, as I mentioned in the definition, we injected our own logic here basically and calling our own function. Now, how do we do this? Let's take a look at the syntax. So in order for us to define what is a tool, we need to use this syntax, and basically it's an array of objects, and it starts like this. Now, two crucial points here is that the name of the function, but also the description. So you can imagine the description like a prompt, which we are telling the AI, this is the goal of this. And based on the goal or what's the description, the AI will know more or less to direct the conversation to that. Okay, so if I'm asking a different question, the AI knows to go and say, okay, this one is only for getting the current weather. If I'm asking like, what's the calculation of 1 + 1, this one is not the right function to use. And also we are explaining the parameters. So we have the properties, location is the name of the property, the parameter, the type, and the description, which is also important because this is how the AI knows how to parse it directly based on what you want. So the city and state, and we also even add an example here, San Francisco, California. So all it is just a representation of a function in a JSON format. So if I take this function, for example, and I would define it with this format, this is how it would look like. And then all we do, instead of going to the normal content, which we usually do, we would go to response, choices 0, message, content. Instead, what we do is we go to tool call, we go to the function, and we pull everything. Let's go back to the customer support delivery assistant. So here we are doing the same. So we have a function that is called get delivery with order ID. It's doing some logic. If the order is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's just getting the date plus 3 days. If it's something else, it will be the date and plus 10 days. Imagine there is a database here that we do select all from order ID where blah, 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 and we get the date. And the goal of this function is to get the delivery date for a customer order. Call this whenever you need to know the delivery date. For example, if the customer is asking where is my package, then we describe that the order ID is the customer order ID, and when it will get the right query, like my order ID is XYZ, it will know to take this XYZ and send it here, already parsed and everything nice, right? So again, if we call this, and again, like this is a customer success assistant, hey, can you help me with my delivery? And what he's telling us is, sure, I can help you. Can you give me please the order ID? We go ahead, we added the message, we mimic a conversation, and the user is telling them that the order ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to get this back. So let's rerun. And this is what we get back. So after we told the order number, the AI figured based on our definitions of the tools, oh, I need to call this tool, and then he made a tool call. So what we can see is that he parsed the request from the user. Now the order ID is order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the function is get delivery date. And we implement exactly the same thing as we did before. And now we get the date plus 3 days. So to summarize these simple examples, we're gonna have some more examples here. Basically, with the power of this function calling, we can, as I said, inject our own logic inside a conversation. And also with the power of Python, we can make it really generic. So here, we don't really care what's the function. We don't really care what's the arguments. As long as we have it defined on Python, it can be whatever it is. So we can define here like 10,000 tools, as long as we have like for each tool that we define for the AI, we have a corresponding function on Python, then it can work. Now let's take a look at more examples. So in this example, we have multiple tools. So again, we initialize the OpenAI. Here we have like get weather, we have calculate and translate. So weather is the same. Calculate is calculating an expression, and translate is translating text to another language, and we tell it exactly what's the properties so it knows how to parse them. And in this example, what we do is we tell the AI two things. Okay, so what's 15 plus 7 and how do we say hello in French? So we have two things and let's see how it can handle those. Okay, so once we run this thing, we can see that we have two tool calls. Okay, so the AI figured out from this one query, I need to call two tools, two functions. So one of them is the expression 15 times 7. Yeah, and then this translation. And all we do is we just go iterate over these tool calls and do the same process as we did before. And when we click play, we essentially get 15 times 7, which is 105. And then we get the translations of hello, which in this case, we didn't use an API, but what we did is just a print. And finally, let's look at this example. So again, we are using the weather example, but something more complex. So here we tell the assistant, the system message is you are a weather bot. You can only answer questions related to weather. And all we do is you just give it the user message. So once the user is saying something, we give it to the AI. We handle your tool calls, and we do also this, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then let's take a look at, let's say play an example. So what's the weather in Tokyo? And it's 28 degrees, it's rainy. And also the difference is that now we are actually calling an API. So it's actually giving us the right weather based on the right information. And what happens if we do 1 plus 1 and we click play? It says that it cannot answer questions like this. Now let's take a look and break down some of the new things that we implemented here. As we saw before, when we call something like this and there is no tool call, what's happening is the finish reason is different. So if it's a simple question and there is no tool call, what we'll see is if we debug this, the finish reason is stop, and in this case we want to get the message.content. So in this case, this is the content, right? If on the other end we are actually calling a function, the finish reason is going to be this tool calls, and now we would be able to handle all the function calling and everything and make sure that we defined everything in here. So that's one thing when we build LLMs, like we need to handle simple regular, let's say regular queries and regular responses, and we also need to be able to handle tool calls. Now the extra thing here that we didn't do in the other examples is the following. So once we calculated the thing from our own logic, okay, as I said, once we injected our own logic in the middle of the conversation, we need to connect it back to the chat so it can, to the assistant or to the chat, so we can show it back to the user. So what we do essentially here is we take the messages that we had so far. If we take a look at the messages array, we have here three things. So we have the system, we have the actual query from the user, and now we also add what we got from the assistant. In this case, we got role assistant and we got the tool calls. This is actually the two important parts. The other ones are not really that important, but we transferred all object because it's easier. And then what we do is we also add another type of message. So now there is a new type of role. If you didn't use it so far, if you didn't use tools and functions, we have a new thing that is called a tool. And essentially we take the result that we got from our own logic and we add this as a message to the chat. And then the way it looks, if we take a look at the messages array, we have system, we have user, we have assistant, which the assistant is doing the tool call back to us. We give it back the information it needs, and we tell it, okay, this is the information you got from the tool. And now we take all these messages and we perform another response, we play it, and then we just, print the content that we got from the message. And if we'll take a look at this response, it's a normal response, like we do with the finish reason of stop, and then we can just go to message, we can just go to content, and here it's spitting out the content that we generated from our own logic, our own database, our own APIs, our own systems back to the user. And let's run here some more examples. So we have the weather in Japan, New York, and London. And in these cases, it could not answer because we told this not to answer, even though we have some, let's say prompt engineering hacking or prompt hacking here. So that's it for this tutorial. Hopefully you understood with all the examples, and you might need to rewatch this. It took me a few iterations, some playing with the code a little bit, giving some examples, But this is a really powerful tool that allows us to build like really interesting applications. For example, if you want to have your own coder in your local machine and you want to add files or combine files, merge files, you just tell it, hey, can you create a folder in this folder and this and that? And what it's doing is going to a Python logic, creating the files and folders and whatever it is, and it's so much easier. If you enjoy videos like this, make sure to click the like and subscribe and notification bell so next time when I upload a new tutorial, you can see it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next time. I appreciate you for watching till this point. Thank you and bye-bye.